The current dark fog implementation is sure to present an initial challenge, and on the normal setting can definitely do damage to you and your bases if you're not paying attention. But with just a bit of patience and care, you can render it largely ineffective, and if you research enough tech upgrades, you'll be able to completely take out a hive from a system by yourself without even the need to use any turrets. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, I think. Let's talk about how you can expect a standard game with the Dark Fog enabled to go in its current implementation. Now would be a good time to skip if you already know how Dark Fog works and you just want to hear my conclusions. I put a chapter in just for that. From the moment you start the game, you'll note that you'll have a hive and planetary base threat meters. The threat meters are in theory monitoring your energy use and go up based on that. But my observation tells me that right now your activities have more to do to affect the threat meter than energy use does. The planetary meters will go up much faster than the hive meter, and in fact planetary energy use hardly seems to draw hive threat unless you're getting that energy from solar sails or Dyson spheres. Finally, it may be worth noting that as far as I can tell, each system's hive seems completely independent from other hives in other systems. In other words, they will not react to you massacring another hive next to them. I expect that this may change in the future since you do get a warning about having to fend off attacks from other systems the first time that you clear the hive from a system. Anyways, from the moment that you start building up your structures on the ground, you'll start to draw threat from the ground bases on the surface. When the threat reaches 100%, the base in question will send out a force to deal with you. Each attack will start out small and will get progressively larger. You may notice that the planetary base has an experience and level number, and these will go up as both it battles you and just as time passes. The bases will not only send out progressively harder attacks over time, but they will also get larger and will contain more units as time goes by if they are left unchecked. And that's where you come in, to check their progress. There are a few different ways to approach the hive, but basically you can either leave it standing in order to take advantage of its behavior and to farm it for resources, or you can destroy it so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. The starter planetary bases are relatively easy to destroy using a combination of turrets and battlefield bases to repair the turrets. You only really need the basic turret and copper bullets here, but anything else that you use will just make your ability to deal with them easier. The key to destroying the bases is to first thin out the herd of hive that will defend it, and then take out a few buildings on the base before it rebuilds its fleet of defenders, which it's going to do surprisingly fast. You probably only have time to destroy a couple of buildings before you will have to deal with more defenders. I suggest destroying the hive drone factories first, as they will reduce how many defenders it spawns. Also, if you notice the hive turrets are targeting Icarus, you need to retreat until you're not being fired upon anymore, as you won't be able to survive that for long. If you want to target individual buildings on the base, what you have to do is turn on your combat interface by using the letter Z on your keyboard, which is this default. And then once that is turned on, you can click on the individual buildings, and that will cause your turrets to attack those buildings directly. What I really like about this update is that it's truly up to you how you proceed. If you like, or at least don't mind the combat and running around defending your base, then you can farm the hive for geothermal vents. As you deny it bases on the surface, it will continue to try to land bases on your planets and create more and more geothermal vents that you can exploit for power. But if instead you want to reduce the hive attacks so that you can concentrate on building up your Dyson sphere as normal, then you can either fly to the hive communicator and negotiate a truce with the hive, which does cost you, by the way, or you can deny it access to resources. When you destroy a planetary vase and fill the hole that it leaves behind, the hive relay will return to the hive and deliver resources that were in it. But if you instead leave the hole alone, the relay will continuously try to rebuild the base using the resources that it has on board. When it reaches 0, it will return to the hive empty. Taking this approach does seem to slow down the hive, as it sends far fewer new relays to create new bases and fill up holes. However, you'll note that the hive base still grows over time, even if you're very good at denying it resources from the relay, so I don't think you can completely stop the hive from growing. Once you get into a groove with how to destroy the bases and hives themselves, you may choose to go back to the Dark Fog communicator and increase the threat level so that you can fight larger forces, if that's what you enjoy doing. Moving on to the hive itself, once you start launching solar sails and Dyson sphere rockets, your threat meter will start going up. I think at this point the rate of change is what's being changed by your activity. It doesn't seem to be directly tied to how much energy you're using, as far as I can tell, but maybe there are tiers, or maybe there's some sort of relationship. I didn't measure the speed of the rate of change, so there you have that. When the hive does attack you, you're going to need planetary shields over your important hubs, as the spaceships will devastate ground structures if they're not shielded. In order to destroy the attackers, you will either need a space fleet deployed from your mecha, or signal towers tied to missile batteries. With just 10 missile turrets and 3 planetary shields, you'll be able to easily repel the first few attacks. If you start mass building corvettes, you'll be able to repel attacks just by deploying them. Although I still recommend using shields because, again, those ships will absolutely pummel your ground base. Unless you enjoy repelling these attacks by building elaborate defenses, once the hive starts attacking, you probably need to start thinking about destroying it. At least currently, there is less of a tangible benefit from space attacks as there are from ground attacks. So in order to destroy a hive base, all you need are a few hundred corvettes, depending on how much you've upgraded them. A Tech 4 corvette is about twice as effective as a Tech 1 version. Some people say you need the Tech 5 corvette, but I disagree. I've been able to destroy hives with Tech 4 versions, no problem. In the current version of 0.10, you can have corvettes and destroyers in space fleets. While destroyers do seem massively more durable and effective against hive ships than the corvettes are, they are harder to manufacture than corvettes. You can only have 3 of them out at a time. So unfortunately right now you tend to be better off with massive amounts of corvettes over a handful of destroyers. But maybe that's just the min-maxer in me talking. In order to safely destroy a hive, you'll want to load up at least 300 corvettes. You'll also want to make sure that you have plenty of power. Every time you replace a destroyed corvette on your fleet, you'll be using power to do so. What I'm trying to say is, don't neglect your mecha upgrades before you go fight the hive. When you attack the hive, you'll want to fly out until you're between 0.35 AUs from it. Once you're at that distance, you want to slow down the mecha to about 250, and then use Z to turn on the battle UI, and click on all fleets to deploy them. Then you can click on hive structures, and if you're close enough, your fleet will zip off to the attack. From that point on, your job is basically to sit within range, watch the fireworks, and ensure you don't get too close or too far from the hive. If you do get too close, within 0.2 AUs from the hive, you'll be in range of its beam weapons, and that will make short work of Icarus within a matter of seconds. You don't want to be there. If you're lower than Tech 4 with your ships and mecha, you will likely run out of energy before you fully destroy the hive. If that happens, just retreat somewhere to build your energy back up, and then go back into the fight to finish it off. Same thing if you run out of corvettes, just retreat back, pick up some more, and then go back. It will not have enough time to rebuild in that short span of time. I wouldn't leave it alone for too long though, or it'll just get back to normal. Please note, you will not be able to fully remove the hive from your system if there are still any planetary relays deployed over planets. Any of these can return to space and respawn the hive core, so you'll need to make sure that these are all destroyed prior to attacking the hive. If the relays are actively sending resources to the hive core will just constantly respawn. Once all the base relays are destroyed and the hive core is destroyed, the hive will be removed from your UI and you will know it's gone from the system. Once you reach Mecha and Combat Tech 4, you can go to another solar system and clear it from hive infestations entirely using your mecha and your space forces, without the need to deploy any turrets or anything like that. For the sake of safety, I do recommend that you use a signal tower along with missile turrets, plus it'll just make destroying things faster. But you absolutely do not have to, and in fact, you can't do that for the base, for the first base, really, if you want to take the easy approach. The easy approach is that you destroy the first base on your own and then use that to put in a geothermal power generator that you then use to power up everything that you're putting down on the planet. So ideally what you would do when you reach an infested solar system is land on each planet, clear it of planetary bases, then quickly launch back to space and destroy the hive. If you're having trouble keeping up with the hive's deployment of new hive relays, because it's going to be doing that while you're attacking it, you can attack the hive and destroy everything except for the core, which will keep respawning. Then just go back down to the planets, destroy any remaining bases or relays, and finally go back to finish off the hive. By the way, your corvettes will attack the base relays that are floating up in space if they're deployed. And that is about the basics of the current implementation of Hive. So, in conclusion, I find the Dark Fog initial implementation to be quite enjoyable to play with, and it does not disrupt the normal gameplay of Dyson Sphere too much. However, there are some problems, and I think these are all simply because it's an initial implementation, and we will see more Dark Fog action as the year progresses. The most glaring obvious hole in the current gameplay, aside from how it ends, I suppose, is that while you can mostly automate your ground defense using turrets and battlefield bases, it's not really possible to automate space defense unless you have lots of signal towers and missile towers all over the place. The space station mentioned by the devs in the store page is likely a way of automating space defense and possibly offense. Additionally, there likely needs to be some kind of tweak to how turrets work, because once you get signal towers, there's almost no point to building any type of turret besides missile turrets, since they are able to track both ground and space targets from anywhere, provided you have enough signal towers scattered about to catch attacks. I do love how menacing the plasma turrets look though, and they actually are quite effective at fighting space threats, but I didn't find them quite as useful as the missile towers. My last concern has to do with the endgame. I recognize that there are going to be lots of opinions about this, but for me personally, I wish there were more and different things to do in the endgame. I feel that the endgame in DSP is much like the tech tree. It goes from having a huge amount of choice in your approach to narrowing down to relatively simple final goals. Yes, there are multiple solar systems to take over, but at least for me, it feels a little underwhelming, as the experience of using your fleet or yourself to destroy Hive on each star feels somewhat repetitive right now. Especially once you're building white cubes, there is very little left to discover in the world, and the Hive challenge is a known quantity by this point. So I think there's a little more to do here. I'm confident that YouthCat's going to pull it off. I guess my point is that it would be nice to see some crazy stuff at the end game. Things like massive battle stations from the Hive, or weird roaming factories, or just other weird stuff beyond the plain Hive. But I could see how that will come later, or possibly on DLC or whatever. But it's still, right now, the Hive feels a bit samey from star system to star system. Don't get me wrong, I still think the game is amazing, especially for the price. and I always enjoy the experience of reaching the end game. But I guess it's just disappointing that it does feel like it's ending at that point. In any case, thanks again for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one.